Three's the Charm by MissCHSparkles, Chapter 21.
Molly, Arthur, I'm glad you two could join us,
Dumbledore greeted as the two Weasleys stepped out of the fireplace.
What's going on?
Molly asked instantly, clearly worried as she spotted two of her boys, and Harry and Hermione.
Has something happened?
She strode over to Percy's side, anxiously checking Ron, as though he might be injured in some mysterious way.
I'm fine, Mum. Percy's being silly.
Ron complained his brother wouldn't let go of him.
Mother,
Percy began, but then faltered. He clearly didn't know how to respond.
Everyone is fine,
Dumbledore stated, as Arthur gave him a worried look.
All young Ronald suffered is a bad rat bite. He, Percival, and his friends are perfectly all right, as are the twins.
But something has happened, Dumbledore asked as Molly looked up, concern written over both of their expressions.
I am afraid so,
Dumbledore said gravely.
It concerns your son's pet rat.
Scabbers? Arthur said in complete confusion. Dumbledore began explaining that Scabbers had really been Peter Pettigrew, a Death Eater in disguise as well as being a mass murderer. As he did so, both Weasley adults paled considerably, eyes wide as their old headmaster carried on.
What?
Molly shrieked in horror as Dumbledore got to the part where Scabbers was revealed and the trio had run after him.
Oh, Merlin, he could have done anything to you.
All he did was bite me,
Ron blurted out before wincing as she descended upon him, hugging him tightly.
Where did he bite you?
She asked fiercely.
Let me see that now.
Meekly Ron raised his hand and she seized it, examining it closely before whipping out her wand and healing the bite. As Ron stared at his freshly healed hand, Molly Weasley turned with a burning eyes and practically growled.
Where is he? Where is that rat?
I am sure the Aurors have him under control, Arthur stated in a very strained voice, ears bright red with emotion.
I don't care, she declared shrilly. I am going to blast him into smithereens. No one hurts my children and gets away with it. That worthless pile of bat droppings! How dare he masquerade as my children's pet? When I get my hands on him, he won't have the kiss to worry about. I'll personally rip his intestines out and shove them up his...
Oh, wow, Harry thought to himself. Now he remembered why he'd been mildly afraid when he first seen Ron's mum angry. With Arthur making no real move to stop her, it was up to Dumbledore to calm the angry mother down.
I realise this is a most difficult situation, he said soothingly, but Alistair Moody is the Auror in charge, as well as my deputy, and the potions master. Rest assured that Peter Pettigrew is secure and will soon face justice.
I'm sorry, Albus, but you can't understand this situation, Molly said helplessly, her eyes moist. I have had a Death Eater living under our roof for 10 years, interacting with my children, doing goodness knows what, and I didn't know.
How could I not have known? I should have realised there was something funny about that rat. I'm a terrible mother.
No, Arthur said with feeling, as Ron and Percy both raised protest.
You are an extraordinary mother,
he continued, striding forward and taking hold of his wife's shoulders.
You've brought up 7 wonderful children and supported my vocation in life, even though it doesn't pay very well. If anyone is to blame, it's me. My job deals with magical objects being disguised as Muggle.
Don't be silly, Arthur, she sniffed loudly. How could you have known that rat was Pettigrew? He seemed so tame and harmless.
Exactly, Arthur said with a sad smile. Maybe we should have noticed that rat was living far longer than he should. But it's like you said. He came across as completely harmless. A perfect pet. He didn't bite. He wasn't always trying to get away. He didn't mind being petted.
Here Arthur swallowed before soldiering on.
He couldn't have been a better pet for us. You can't really say anything else. And I imagine that was his aim. To be so perfect, yet so forgettable, that we would never question his presence. I don't know if anyone could have really penetrated his disguise, unless by pure chance. That is correct, Arthur, Dumbledore said gravely. Neither I nor any of my professors saw through Pettigrew's mask of deceit. Do not blame yourselves.
But Molly said as a new thought seemed to occur to her. There'll be an inquiry. The ministry will investigate. What if they blame us for what happened? Arthur could lose his job. Percy started at this, and even Arthur hesitated for a moment.
I don't believe that will happen, Dumbledore said soothingly. The ministry will want to get this cleared up as soon as possible, particularly as they did not give Sirius Black a trial, and could have potentially cleared this up years ago. While some might try to blame you for not recognising Pettigrew, it could also be raised that the ministry is responsible for the danger Pettigrew could have posed to your children. He paused before saying, But I believe I have a possible solution, which could solve a lot of problems, if you are willing to hear it.
Anything, Molly said fervently, clutching her husband to her.
Sirius Black will need to stand trial, along with Peter Pettigrew, for what has happened, Dumbledore began. This means he'll be removed from Azkaban until he can recover enough to defend himself. It might look good in the public eye if you provide assistance to him.
You mean financial assistance? Arthur asked worriedly, but Dumbledore shook his head.
No. As the very last male heir of the Black family, Sirius is a very well-off young man. What he desperately needs is care and attention, as well as the sense of freedom that he has been denied for so long. St. Mungo's is a good hospital, but it is still a building locked away from the world. If I am not being too bold in suggesting this, do you think you could care for him?
Molly said with a frown, as she and her husband considered this. Mum, if Harry's godfather came to stay with us, that means we could have Christmas together. It would be great.
Ron, I'm sure that would be lovely, but I'm not sure. There's Ginny to consider, Molly said slowly. It might not be appropriate. We are cousins of some degree.
Arthur mused practically to himself.
I think we need to talk this over, Albus.
Dumbledore nodded as he said,
That sounds like a good idea, Arthur. Now, the Minister is interviewing Aura Moody and Professor Snape about the situation. They will be transporting Pettigrew out of the castle later.
They're not going to let him get away, are they?
Harry asked urgently. Alistair Moody knows what he's doing, Dumbledore said firmly. While Pettigrew is under his control, he will definitely not get away.
Good, Harry said as Molly came over and gave him a hug.
Are you okay, Harry dear? She asked anxiously. This must be a horrible shock for you.
Yeah, Harry agreed as she let him go. I never knew I had a godfather. I just hope he'll be all right. I've heard Azkaban is a horrible place.
I hope Ron wasn't telling you stories,
Molly said with a frown as Ron said, Mum, no, I didn't. Harry overheard someone talking about it, and he asked me. I said it was our prison, and it's a really awful place.
It is, Arthur said grimly before smiling. If we decide we can help your godfather, Harry, you'll be the first to know. I do know he'll need help, but he will get it. Whether it's from us or others, he will recover. I promise.
Thank you, sir, Harry said, smiling widely. Arthur smiled back before looking over at Hermione.
How are you doing? This must have given you quite the fright.
I'm okay, Mr. Weasley, Hermione said with a smile. It was rather shocking, but I know Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape won't let him escape. Arthur smiled, glad she wasn't in distress. Turning back to Dumbledore, he said,
Does Fudge need to talk to us?
Dumbledore nodded, saying,
He does wish to have a quick word before he leaves.
Suddenly turning to the children, he said,
But I believe you four will miss the Halloween feast if you don't hurry along. The feast? Merlin, I almost forgot!
Percy exclaimed, leaping to his feet as Ron gratefully moved away from him.
I should be there as prefect.
Don't worry, Percy. You can take Ron, Harry and Hermione down there, Molly said soothingly. You all go and enjoy yourselves. We'll take care of things here.
And we'll let you know what's happening with your godfather,
Arthur told Harry kindly. Thank you, Harry said again, but he didn't mind at all.
We'd better hurry, Percy said briskly as they all trooped to the door. Thank you for all your help, Professor McGonagall. Mother, Father, I'll send you an owl.
Thank you, Percy, Molly said gratefully, as they all left the adults to their business. Much later, they returned to the common room, stuffed with food and finally able to talk freely. They allowed the others to all troop upstairs to their dorms, leaving the common room wonderfully empty.
That went surprisingly well.
Hermione yawned, covering her mouth politely.
I almost had a heart attack when Scabbers nearly got away.
You're telling me, Ron said as he flopped down on a chair, draping his legs over one of the arms.
I thought Mum took it well.
That was well? Harry questioned as he went to sit cross-legged in front of them.
Oh yeah, Ron said casually. First time around she went completely nuts.
Doing a high-pitched voice, he imitated his mother's voice. A Death Eater in our house, and you never told me? How could you keep this from me? I cannot believe you would ever do such a thing. We had a mass murderer in our house for 10 years. He could have done anything.
And so on and so forth,
Ron finished, stretching himself out luxuriously.
Poor her, Hermione murmured. I couldn't imagine being in their shoes. What an awful thing to discover. They'll get over it, Ron said easily. Least he's been arrested. That's one less thing to worry about, right? And if Pettigrew never gets Voldemort, he shouldn't rise or whatever. Smooth sailing from here on out. Yeah, and I'm secretly a Metamorph-Magus, Harry said, rolling his eyes. Really? I didn't know,
Ron said with a grin, as Harry managed to smile.
Of course I am. I once regrew my hair in one single night. That proves beyond a shadow of a doubt I am one,
Harry said earnestly, as Ron said with a snigger.
And the reason you've never shown the slightest ability since... I don't know, Harry shrugged. Maybe Dumbledore blocked that ability or something. They both laughed as Hermione said dryly, As far as I'm aware, you can't isolate a single magical ability and block it. Magic is such an intricate part of our being. It would be like trying to remove our very DNA. Our what now? Ron said in confusion. Never mind, Hermione said with a smile. It's a Muggle thing. It's a little complicated to explain. But if you ever come over to mine, I'll show you a science video. Video, he said slowly. I think I've heard of that. Something like a comic that's somehow been animated? Sort of, Hermione said with a nod. If you come to mine, you can watch the television. And I think you'd love the cinema.
Sure, he said with a shrug. He still didn't understand what any of that was, but he'd go along with it.
Been years since I've been to the cinema, Harry said musingly. Dudley never cared if I watched the television with him, but Uncle Vern and Aunt Petunia weren't very keen on me watching stuff with them. We should all go to the cinema, Hermione said eagerly. I think there's a really good Disney film coming out this year. I'd love to see it on the big screen again.
Ron shook his head. He had no idea what they were talking about.
Harry looked out of the window, watching a light rain fall following the thunder.
Was it raining over in Azkaban? Would Sirius be getting out tonight? Or would the Ministry drag its heels and leave him there until the last possible minute? He really hoped this wasn't the case. The very notion that his godfather had had to endure the Dementors any longer made him grit his teeth. If they didn't release him soon, he'd probably do something crazy, like write to Rita Skeeter. Hopefully he'd only need to do that as a last resort. Later that night, on a storm-battered island off Scotland's west coastline, Sirius Black shivered as a cool breeze washed over him. Summer had ended, and the nights and days were growing cold again. Not that it really ever stopped being cold, but at least summer brought some release. Then he was merely cold instead of bone-chillingly so. It didn't matter that he could transform and curl up. He was so thin and weak that it barely made a difference. But what worse than the comfort caused by the cold, uncomfortable bed, and the constant hunger gnawing at his insides, was the guilt. The crushing guilt that he was reminded during his every waking moment, and most of his sleeping ones, was the fact that he had sent his brother and wife to their deaths, and orphaned his little godson, all because of his own stupidity in trusting that rat. Because he assumed that he was so weak that the rat would never betray them. No, it wasn't even that. He should never have trusted anyone to protect them. Not the rat, not Remus, not Dumbledore, no one. The responsibility had been his, and his alone. If only he had accepted it. He could have easily stayed with them. Voldemort would never have found him inside Godric's Hollow. If he could even find the house he resided in. Stupid, stupid, stupid bastard. He was right where he deserved to be. If the Dementors finally decided to suck out what remained of his soul, he'd gladly welcome it. He'd bloody pucker his lips up for them.
We will bathe in the blood of traitors and mudbloods. We will have our day of judgment.
Fuck, he murmured. Something had set off dear old Bella. Probably one of the human guards. She didn't really bother with her propaganda for the Dementors. He wondered what they were doing in this part of the prison. Maybe they had a new inmate to look forward to. One that would scream, cry, beg and bewail their situation until the madness set in, and they fell into silence. Wonderful.
Is it this cell?
He turned his head away, not interested, until he sensed they'd come to a stop in front of his cell. No doubt the verbal abuse would come any moment now. All right, get up, you're coming with us. He turned and looked at them in confusion. Did they address him? There were 3 of them, dressed in what looked like Aura uniforms. Come on, we don't have all day. One of them snapped as the middle one sent his partner a stern look.
No need for that,
the second man said in a deep voice. Looking down at the third, smaller man, he said,
Watch the Dementors. They are not happy about this.
That's an understatement, the third man muttered, moving a little distance away. Ugh, what do you want? Sirius managed to croak out after clearing his dry throat. Maybe the Ministry were here to finally put him out of his misery.
We have been authorized to remove you from Azkaban,
said the second man, who seemed exceedingly calm despite the surroundings.
Can you stand?
In something of a daze, Sirius slowly got up. This had to be a trick of some sort. Why? He managed to ask as his cell door was waved open. You get in a trial, the first man scoffed. No evidence or some bollocks like that. He received a glare from his partner, but Sirius didn't even notice. No evidence. Could it be?
Have they found him?
He asked in a whisper. The 3 men all shared a glance before the second one carefully asked.
Who?
The rat. Pettigrew. He moaned as they stared. He's crazy, the first man muttered, but he didn't make a move to stop him from coming forward.
We are not at liberty to discuss the care at this time,
the second tall man stated, reaching forward to grab a hold of Sirius's shoulder. Is there anything you can discuss with me? Sirius chuckled, and he thought he saw the man holding him smile slightly.
We are going to St. Mungo's. They'll treat you, and then it will be up to the minister where you go.
Who's the minister now? Sirius automatically asked as he was led out of the cell, and, amazingly, only his wrists were bound in front of him, instead of the ropes being wrapped around his entire being. Cornelius Fudge, grunted the third man, keeping his wand held high as Sirius sensed the biting cold of the Dementors. No idea who that is. Sirius coughed, feeling his throat tighten up and start to ache. He wouldn't be able to talk much more.
Didn't think you would,
chuckled the second man, and Sirius knew he was going to like him. Shame this wasn't a great place for a chat. He hoped for another opportunity that would present itself for that. Come on, they're getting jittery, the third man stated grimly, holding his wand up.
Let's go,
the second man said, and they hurried from the corridor. This aroused some of the prisoners. A few started to shout abuse, especially Bellatrix, but Sirius barely even heard them. He just couldn't believe he was going to get out of here after 10 long years of nothing. Finally something. Had they really caught the rat? Was he finally going to get a chance to explain himself? Even though he felt like he thoroughly deserved the punishment. That rat could be out there and in a position to hurt Harry. He had to tell everyone he could about this. Even if he was sent straight back to Azkaban, as long as that rat joined him, he would sleep so much easier. For the first time, a light blossomed within him, and even the Dementor's hissing intakes could not snuff it out. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Serious. Yay! Love it, love it, love it. One thing I love about this is the Weasleys. I've said it once, I'll say it before, they are one of my favourite fictional families ever. Not only does Molly go to comfort Harry, Arthur makes sure to check up on Hermione. It's just like, we've always known those two are basically honorary Weasleys who eventually marry in, but like from the beginning, they are both like, these are our kids, we'll keep an eye on them, and I love that. And Sirius being there again, like that willingness to protect Harry as soon as he figures out Pettigrew's part of this. Love the Godfather. And now he'll have time to spend with his little pup. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, guys, and I'll buy no bells. I'll see you in another video. Take care.